Today, we're going to be taking a look at what is quite possibly my favorite strategy game, Dominions 5. I've been a fan of the series in general since 3, the first one I played. I saw this screenshot, and I ended up pirating it that night. Within the week I had bought it, and I ended up buying 3 copies of 4. Fuck Desura! And I ended up buying 2 copies of 5. I really, really like this franchise. So, what kind of game is it? It's hard to describe, but the Steam review by Butzo Power describes it as, if Total War and Football Manager had sex on a bed of D&D books, you would end up with this sort of game. This is actually pretty accurate, maybe with a little bit of Age of Mythology thrown in. It enjoys other such rave reviews as 10 out of 10 would get sodomized by a fountain again, and they're painting the hallways of my apartment, and I am getting cancer from the fumes. So, why do I and others love it so very much? Well, it has so much depth, and it's a game that really gives the player freedom in how they want to play. Name me another game where I can be fucking Cthulhu, Lord of Rillia, and invade the surface world, my mere presence turning the inhabitants insane as my star-spawn underlings pull more Shoggoths, Aboleths, and unfathomable abominations from beyond the stars into reality. Name me another game where I can LARP as the bad dad that makes weebs sad and creates an army of stitched-together chimeric monstrosities literally fueled by human sacrifices that spread leprosy throughout the world and are also sometimes Godzilla? Name me another strategy game where I can play as the Necromancer Lord who actually turns himself into a lich and raises tens of thousands of undead monsters and freaks and actually watch them destroy the armies of civilized world in real time on screen through the game. Or be the army of priests whose faith in their god is so strong that they banish said undead army from this material plane. Or an army of Peruvian angels who employ guerrilla warfare tactics of strafing the enemy leaders and mages with ice arrows enchanted to age their victims at 800 times the normal rate and flying away, the generals turning to dust within a scant few turns. Name me a single fucking game where, in my dire and desperate times, I can decide to summon my ancient Mongolian ancestors' spirits of our wisest kings and fiercest warriors, waking them and taking them straight out of hell to be bound into the bravest and strongest and most devout warriors we have in our tribe, and imbuing them with sacred armor meant to shrug off any blow, enchanted with the very essence of the tribe's history and past, and then proceed to fill them with the divine equivalent of plastic explosives and have them martyr themselves into Dragon Hannibal's elephant army, their bombs of peace spooking the elephants and causing them to trample their own army to death. Whew. So, what is Dominions even about? Freedom and variety, sure, but Dominions is also about an endless cycle of jihad, because Zeus dipped out of creation to go pick up some smokes at the liquor store, and never came back. See, the premise of the game is that reality is a wheel that constantly repeats itself. Each age is marked by the ascension of the Pantocrator, the god above all gods. He reigns for some time, then mysteriously disappears. This marks the beginning of an era of struggle, as various powerful individuals calling themselves gods rise up to claim the throne. These pretender gods amass disciples from all sorts of nations based around old myths, civilizations, and religions. There can be only one, however, and so the holy wars begin, until another Pantocrator rises to the throne and the cycle eventually repeats itself. Dominions is also about change and adaptation. Though the universe might always repeat, it is a little different each time. This is reflected in its ages mechanic, which is something that I truly think sets Dominions apart from other strategy games. See, before you can select which nation you're playing, you have to decide whether you're playing early, middle, or late ages. The different ages reflect different levels of magic and technology in the world. You can actually see the rise and fall of nations just by skimming the tooltips for the nations on the different pages for the ages. Like these assholes, Airmore. In the early ages, they are having a crisis of faith between the old gods of fire and the new god, a parallel to ancient Rome. By Middle Ages, their empire crumbles because they couldn't keep the death magic in their pants. The citizens turned undead overnight by a foul ritual. retaining their intelligence, they decide to do the Roman thing and reconquer the world, but as skeletons this time. But by the start of the late ages, they are called Lemuria, the Soul Gates. Why? Well, because the surviving not Byzantines put the soulless ghosts and zombies to menial work, only the common folk felt like they didn't have enough slaves.
Slaves! This is your song, thank you. Slaves!
Rioting until the ruling priests accepted their demands and opened a portal to hell to let the dead come out voluntarily and do the jobs the Scalarians didn't want to do. Instead, ghostly warriors, kings, and a hungry god poured out to slaughter all the living things on the world. Hell, the land is so covered in death magic, sometimes people just up and fucking die. Gameplay reflects this by not letting you recruit any units, but instead giving you tons of free units every turn, as more undead pour out of the Soul Gate. It also lets you summon powerful undead units other nations don't have access to. This may sound broken, but everybody is kind of broken in different ways, especially in the late ages.